Brothers, this is Dr. Phil Chavez. What I'd like to do is to go back to some of the basics here in the 18 pillars, which are underpinning what I consider the royal priest. Now, I want to start with the leader. We're going to go back a little bit, but give you an overview of what I want to talk about by way of introduction. I would say men possess naturally a heart for leadership because that is to what they're called. And so they're given certain skills and aptitudes by nature, which are certainly supposed to develop. But it's important that when men do this, they connect with their heart when dealing with these things of manhood. I find that if a man cannot connect with his natural aptitudes in a very visceral way, then they're not going to really operate within him very well. So everything that I do that I explain here with respect to manhood and leadership, hopefully it'll strike really well viscerally with you and right to the heart. But to review the big picture here, no matter where a man stands on the grid of faith or life, he keeps asking three things to himself. What do I do now? Who am I? And where am I going? Now, these are good questions since they aim directly at his mission, his identity, and his journey. His mission, what he does, his identity, who he is, and his journey, where he's going. These are six core pillars belong to each of these three categories. And so we have 18 pillars in all. And I believe this really is what undermines royal priesthood. Now, there are other pillars we can add, but I believe these 18 are the most fundamental. And they comprise, to my mind, the most basic way to talk about a man. And I've thought about these and I've tested them for about 15 years in men's ministry. So these aren't just things that I've just invented recently. These are very much time tested. So for the upcoming weeks, what I want to do is give lessons on a man's mission, identity, and his journey. But again, we'll start here now with mission. So to summarize, as you've heard before, in the natural order, a man possesses a mission as a leader, a protector, and a provider. And in the supernatural realm, as a baptized man, he has a mission as a priest, a prophet, and a king. Now, when I speak about royal priest, yes, in some ways it's a summary of these roles, priest, prophet, and king, the summary of those baptismal missions. But also everything a man is to become in the fullness of manhood also points to him being a royal priest. So brothers, as we all know, as I mentioned before, with men, the first role that stands out the most for him is leadership. This duty underlies that longing of every man when he asks himself, what is it that I want to be known for? Every man wants to be a great leader. Yes, he may aspire to be rich above all things, but in terms of his actual capacities, he wants to know he can lead. Now, it's interesting, when you look at the many books, seminars, training materials on manhood, for making leaders, there's too many to even count. And most men have been through some kind of training in leadership. Now, it's interesting, when I was a young man, there were not so many leadership programs. But now training in leadership is everywhere. Incidentally, it always seems strange to me to put men and women together in leadership training. Now, there's a few reasons for this. One is our natural roles are different, but aside from that, at a more core level, the way we think, the way men and women act, and even I'll say the way they feel are different. So when we speak about aptitudes for leadership, I think generically they may be the same. The problem is specifically they're very different. That's why I think it's very important to form men as men and to speak to them as men, and that's what we're doing here. Many of the qualities that you see in men and women as adults, you can actually see in childhood. And this is really fascinating because in some way what we see in childhood foreshadows what's in an adult. Now we see this actually in boys where leadership becomes very important because when guys come together, boys come together to play ball on the streets, what's their first question? They can say who will be the leader, but they want to know who will be the captains. Now what's interesting about boys too, what's real obvious is that they're natural leaders who always seem to stand out. Guys who always seem to have more leadership abilities than others. And what you find is among boys, they will naturally defer to those figures who are naturally leaders. And so, of course, too, you remember we were playing ball in the streets, when we wanted to start, we wanted to start right away, right? We didn't want to tarry. So we wanted this old, let's pick the teams and let's go. And boys usually like to do that. They don't like to waste time. But this natural desire for leadership in a man, you see this too whenever he enters a meeting room, a church, or any gathering. A man wants to know fundamentally who's in charge. Now, it's interesting, even when I go to, say, church or I go to mass, it's, I can think about preparing for it and what I might be reading and probably preparations and all the rest. But when it comes to mass, what do I want to know? Well, who's presiding? Who's the priest? Who's in charge? It's just something that comes to me right away. But this is something every man wants to know whenever he enters a meeting, whenever he's part of a committee, if he's with a board or he has to deal with a school. He always wants to know who's in charge. Now, it's interesting too, moving on, the great leader, one of the interesting things about him, he could take up almost any field and walk into any situation right away and have some aptitude to lead. Even if he may not know the specifics of the kind of enterprise he's leading in, a natural leader could take charge in almost any field right away. This is what's amazing about really good leaders. Now, in the order of nature too, again, we as men, we want to always find capable leaders. Again, this is what every man wants to become, and so this is what every man deeply desires. So this is the reason why I think movies like Braveheart, Gladiator, Lord of the Rings are men's favorite movies. For the simple reason that these movies feature manly leaders of boldness and courage, leaders they respect. It's interesting. I used to think it's that men simply prefer war movies, which they do. But it seems like in battle, that's where we see leadership the most, and that's where we see virtue. And these are the things which really impress men. We want heroes that know how to lead in battle. No man wants to be led from behind. And so, absolutely speaking, lest we could talk about feelings and inclusiveness and get right to the orders, this is what men expect, this is what men want. Now, when looking at these movies again, what's important to understand, men not only want to be a great leader, but they want to be called forth by one and led to a great cause or a great purpose. And so, what's interesting with war movies, I think most of us men, we imagine ourselves actually engaged in them. Somehow we think this is the case too, I think in sports. We somehow immerse ourselves in any sport we're watching. That's one of the reasons why we're so critical of other players. In fact, we imagine ourselves against them as if I would do better in this catch or in that pass or whatnot. This is what makes men very fascinating, because when we're looking at movies with great leadership, we actually see ourselves in those movies. So again, brothers, to go back, a man wants to be summoned by a William Wallace, a Maximus, an Aragorn, not a Mr. Rogers. A man's looking for a George Washington, a George Patton to follow. We're all looking to be impressed by them. If not, there's something disparaging about leadership. If we're not impressed, then we were unimpressed. And if that's the case, it is so hard to follow. So this is one of the reasons why I believe men are not very much interested in their church, because they often don't find their pastors to be bold, audacious men. In the Catholic Church, we want our bishops to be generals. We want our pastors to be battle commission lieutenants. We don't want them to be proven somehow. And I don't think the seminary really does that, nor their lifestyle. It's often the case that Such men as clergy are too busy in academia living in their heads to appreciate or realize or actually to imbibe any real skills of leadership. I'm not sure there's a seminary anywhere where there's a course, or rather where there's any kind of testing in leadership. And there should be one, leadership that's very gospel based. Jesus himself understood the hearts of men for leadership. And that's why he called his disciples by arousing this desire. And this is so clever of him. Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. That is what a man wants to be heard. He wants to be summoned for something very specific to do. And yes, in the order of nature, we all want to be fishers of men. We all want to lead other men. Now, sometimes Jesus would simply say, at least as we find in the Gospels, follow me, which makes it even simple, because what he's saying is, you follow me and I will lead you. I will lead you if you so choose. Now, interesting enough, brothers, you notice he only did this to men. He didn't summon women this way. And brother, could you imagine if the pastor of your parish said that to you? Follow me. Or if he said, follow me and I will make you a fisher of men. Follow me. Come every Tuesday to church, and you will get the training you need to make a difference in the world that will impact your family, your business place, your community. I think a lot of men would be more engaged if their pastor led them like Jesus Christ. And so this is one of the reasons why I think the churches are often ineffective, because the pastors do not really call them forth. Now, Jesus proposed to make leaders out of his followers, not just bureaucrats or managers. So it's interesting, you see the many assigned. Peter, James, and John were his top captains. They were all intrepid men, they're daring, and they were all in their own way full of thunder. He was not interested in the guys who could read the Summa Theologiae or who had an apologetics mindset and could quote the scriptures like a machine gun. Jesus wasn't interested in that kind of man. He wanted virile, spiritual shepherds, audacious men, men of grit. Our Lord wanted what would make for bold pastors and nothing less. Now, this may sound a little harsh, but even for myself, I don't really find one general in the Catholic Church. I don't know of one that's like a John the Baptist or a David or a St. Paul. I'm not sure where they are. But again, I think training in this regard and appreciation is deeply lacking. You know, it's hard for men in general to lead and to make decisions. I understand that. There's a lot of things which could complicate a man's leadership today. Too many things he has to be attentive to, which does make it hard to lead. But brothers, I think we have to put trust in your heart for leadership, that you have the abilities to lead and to be led, that you have the skills and the aptitudes to master and train all those who are under you, especially the males you mentor. The younger men, brothers, be assured they're looking for leaders. They're looking to be called out. They're looking for mentors to say, follow me. So let's start blaming these young men for being disconnected, or some may consider them lazy, maybe unmotivated. Brothers, be attentive to reaching out to them, and that will change. And through your mentoring, through your leadership, you will make a great impact upon the world. And God be with you.